Have you ever caught yourself questioning everything around you, searching for deeper answers? When we talk about Lucifer, what comes to mind? A red demon with horns spreading evil and torturing people in hell? Or maybe Lucifer Morningstar from the Netflix series? Drop a comment below. I want to know what you think before we continue. What if I told you Lucifer was never the devil? Quite the opposite. Our ancestors saw Lucifer as the light bearer, the one who brings spiritual illumination. Today, you're going to meet a Lucifer very different from pop culture. We'll travel through several civilizations across history, where Lucifer appears in other forms, yet symbolizes the same qualities. And have you ever heard the theory that Jesus Christ is Lucifer? If you've never heard that before, are you curious now? Did you know there are direct connections drawn between Jesus Christ and Lucifer? Tell me in the comments. Your perspective matters here. And did you know Lucifer has been represented as feminine entities going back more than 5,000 years? In this video, we're going to peel back every layer of this myth, from our ancestors to the present day. And by the end, you'll see that Lucifer says far more about you and about this exact moment in human history than you might imagine. This is going to be one of the most important videos on the channel. I want to clarify everything about Lucifer. My commitment is to knowledge. What you do with it is your responsibility. You can research every claim presented here, draw your own conclusions, and when you finish this video, comment below. Let's discuss it together. This video is the result of more than 20 years of study and research on the topic. I'm not here to be the owner of truth, but to share knowledge. I organize this video into chapters to improve your experience. You can follow the timeline to see which chapter you're in to make learning easier, or jump straight to the chapter that interests you. Everything presented here is intended to inform and provoke reflection, with no intention of attacking any religion or belief. The goal is to share knowledge and encourage healthy questioning, always with respect for all traditions. I'm Gabriel Alexandre, and this is our point of connection, the Esoterica Mind Portal. This isn't just a channel. It's a movement of awakened souls who know, deep down, that we're here to leave a mark. By subscribing and turning on notifications, you're not just watching content. You're stepping into a circle of seekers building something far greater than ourselves. Every like is a vote of strength that carries this message further across the world. Every share is a spark that brings more kindred spirits into this same frequency of light. And this portal belongs to you as much as it does to me. Your voice shapes what we create next. Comment below with the topic you want to see. The idea that gathers the most likes and engagement will become our next dedicated video. As the ancient sages said, "O man, know thyself, and you will know the gods and the universe." Together we carry that wisdom forward. It's worth remembering that in paganism, our ancestors saw the universe as a reflection of the human being. What happened among the stars reflected the human soul itself. Many myths were inspired by the movements of planets, stars, and the cycles of nature. That's why the planet Venus was so important to them. The name Lucifer sends chills down spines, stirs fear, and even outrage. For millions, it's synonymous with absolute evil, the devil himself, humanity's eternal enemy. But do we really know Lucifer? Or have we been conditioned for centuries to believe a version that's entirely off the mark? By watching this video, you'll be led to deeply question everything you've heard about Lucifer until now. To fully understand who Lucifer is, we first have to undo centuries of misinformation. The very name Lucifer comes from Latin, composed of lux, light, and Fero, to bear. Light bearer is the true meaning of the name. So how did something with such a positive, radiant meaning get turned into its total opposite? To understand the confusion, we need to look more closely at historical sources. Originally, Lucifer was associated with the morning star, the planet Venus, that bright star that appears on the horizon just before dawn, long before the term Lucifer was attached. Venus was also a symbol of the sacred feminine for our ancestors. Think of goddesses like Inanna, Aphrodite, and others. Symbolically, Lucifer represented the herald of the dawn, the one who precedes and announces the birth of the day. the arrival of light, wisdom, and the awakening of human knowledge. The first major confusion comes from Bible translations themselves. The name Lucifer does not appear in the original Hebrew texts. In the Hebrew Bible, specifically in Isaiah 14:12, the reference is to Helel ben Shachar, meaning shining one, son of the dawn. It's a poetic reference to the king of Babylon, symbolizing his political downfall. In the ancient Greek Septuagint, the term used was Eosphoros, which means bringer of light. Only later, in the 4th century, in St. Jerome's Latin translation of the Bible, the Vulgate, did the word Lucifer appear as a literal rendering of Eosphoros. So how did Lucifer get tied to Satan? That linkage developed gradually through the contributions of several early Christian thinkers. Origen of Alexandria, c. 185–253 CE, one of the great theologians of early Christianity, was among the first to interpret Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 as allegories of a proud angel's fall, laying a foundation for associating the light-bearer with evil. He wasn't alone. Other thinkers like Tertullian, c. 160–220 CE, and later Augustine of Hippo, 354–430 CE, played key roles in reinforcing and popularizing this reading, especially in the Western Church. Across the 4th and 5th centuries, that interpretive tradition took root. Lucifer's image fused more and more with that of Satan, not out of fidelity to the original biblical text, but through a complex weave of allegory and culture that shaped the Christian imagination. And it's important to say this plainly. Nowhere in the entire Bible is there an objective, clear description that identifies Lucifer as Satan or as a fallen angel. Beyond the weight of translations, it was in the fervor of the Middle Ages, when fear was the best tool of control, that the legend of Lucifer as devil reached its peak. From the 13th century onward, with Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, Lucifer took on new layers of horror. No longer the bringer of light, he became the monster imprisoned in the depths of hell, the ultimate symbol of rebellion and eternal punishment. And it didn't stop there. The same symbolic blending stitched beasts and serpents, dragons, and the adversary of the archangel Michael into Lucifer's image. In the book of Revelation, written at the end of the 1st century, the ancient dragon is identified as Satan, but never as Lucifer. Over the centuries, tradition conflated everything. Dragon, serpent, Satan, and Lucifer became cast members in the same dark pageant. Curiously, while centuries of Christian tradition tried to slap a label of wickedness on the morning star and attach it to Lucifer, the New Testament itself flips that narrative. In Revelation, written near the end of the 1st century, Jesus himself claims that luminous, liberating title. In Revelation 22:16 we read, "I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright morning star." No ambiguity. The original Greek uses Eosphoros, light-bearer, the same term used centuries earlier for the morning star. Rather than a symbol of ruin, the morning star is presented as a symbol of redemption, hope, and renewal, linked directly to the risen Christ. In other words, what tradition later distorted was, originally, a symbol of revelation, promise, and love. Had you ever thought about it this way? Write your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your view. Have you ever considered how dragons, symbols of power, renewal, and wisdom in so many cultures, were turned into monsters of absolute evil? Dragons were ambiguous, complex figures. In Mesopotamia, Tiamat was the dragon goddess of primordial waters, both creator and destroyer. In ancient Egypt, Apep, the cosmic serpent, represented chaos, yet belonged to the eternal cycle of order and rebirth. And in the East, even today, the dragon is a sign of luck, protection, and power. Just look at Chinese festivals. Things start to shift between the late 1st and early 2nd centuries, CE. In the book of Revelation, around 95 CE, we get the great battle in heaven. Michael, the warrior archangel, faces a colossal dragon identified as Satan. But notice, the text never mentions Lucifer. Revelation 12:7-9. What follows is a true symbolic remix. Between the 2nd and 5th centuries, theologians like Origen, Tertullian, and Augustine begin to blend it all together. They take the morning star of Isaiah, originally a metaphor for arrogant kings, mix it with Revelation's dragon, and toss in the Satan from the book of Job. And there it is, the definitive confusion among Lucifer, dragon, and devil. A confusion not found in the original texts. The Middle Ages do the rest. In art, stories, and sermons, Michael becomes heaven's military champion, the archangel who defeats Lucifer, Satan, dragon, and casts him into darkness. The legend of St. George slaying the dragon explodes from the 13th century onward, and creatures once seen as guardians or symbols of mystery become nothing but evil to be destroyed. Painters, writers, and preachers reinforce the image. Even the original concept of a demon was drastically altered over the centuries. In the ancient Eosphoros world, especially in Greece, the word daemon carried no inherently evil connotation. A daemon was simply an intermediate spirit, a force of nature, or a spiritual presence that could inspire, protect, or guide human beings. Great thinkers like Socrates openly spoke of their personal daemon, a kind of inner guide or conscience that counseled them and nudged them toward the good. For the Greeks, daimones inhabited a universe full of nuance, sometimes protective, sometimes challenging, but rarely, essentially evil. In Roman tradition, the term became genii, genius for men, Juno for women. Tutelary spirits linked to each person, family, place, or even to ideas and creations. Daimones were considered bearers of gifts, creativity, wisdom, and potential. In paganism more broadly, whether Celtic, Egyptian, Babylonian, or African practices, spiritual entities, often called nature spirits, ancestors or lesser gods, were invoked for protection, fertility, healing, inspiration, and connection to the natural cycles of life. Contact with these beings was part of daily life and popular religiosity. They weren't seen as humanity's enemies, but as manifestations of the sacred in its many faces, some brighter, some darker, always woven into the cosmos's balance. The word devil went through a similar distortion, from the Greek diabolos, the one who divides, slanderer, adversary. It was originally a legal term for the accuser in court, the one who puts obstacles, who opposes, who challenges. In the New Testament, this adversary appears at times as a force of opposition, not as the source of absolute evil. Only later in history, especially during the Middle Ages and under the influence of religious dualism, did diabolos come to be understood as the supreme enemy, the personification of evil in opposition to God and the good. Likewise, the concept of Satan has origins and meanings quite different from what later traditions spread. In Hebrew, Shaitan literally means adversary or accuser, and originally did not refer to an essentially evil entity, but to an agent of God charged with testing, questioning, and challenging human beings. In the Old Testament, especially in the book of Job, Satan appears as one who presents accusations and sets trials, acting more like a prosecutor than a malevolent enemy. It was only after the Babylonian exile and contact with Persian dualist ideas, like Zoroastrianism, between the 6th and 4th centuries BCE, that the figure of Satan began to take on clearer contours as an opponent of the good, and gradually became associated with evil and temptation. Even then, in original Jewish traditions, Satan was never a rival to God, but a necessary agent within divine order, one who provokes, tests, and sets limits, always under the Creator's command. Enjoying this content? Share this video to help spread the message, and tap like below. YouTube doesn't usually boost this kind of video, so your support makes all the difference for this channel to gain visibility on the platform. In pagan traditions, figures equivalent to the adversary were often gods of fertility, wild nature, or liminal forces. Pan in Greece, Cernunnos in Celtic traditions, Loki, none of them essentially evil, but forces of transformation, disruption, and renewal. Many of these deities were later demonized and associated with evil and disorder, even though in their original context they were revered as expressions of life's cycles and the sacred itself. Adenal. Some mystical and esoteric currents, Satan represents not a malevolent being, but the very force of questioning, the necessary shadow for self-knowledge, maturity, and spiritual evolution. Adversity, trial, and doubt appear not as punishment, but as opportunities for growth and inner freedom. Have you ever seen a symbol labeled evil, only to learn later that its meaning was completely different? Just as Lucifer was turned into a villain, there's another symbol that's been drastically distorted. Over the centuries, the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Let's unpack how this archetype, older than humanity's written memory, became religion's favorite scapegoat, and what's really behind that story. If there's an image more divisive, fascinating, and terrifying than Lucifer himself, it's the serpent in Eden. Since childhood, we've been conditioned to see it as the ultimate evil, the devil embodied, the great tempter responsible for original sin and humanity's fall. Yet as with Lucifer, the serpent is also the victim of a narrative. Long before the biblical text, the serpent reigned as one of humanity's most sacred symbols. We have a full video on the serpent, Kundalini, and Hermes' caduceus. Across ancient civilizations, it represented the feminine, rebirth, hidden wisdom, and the eternal cycle of life. In Egypt, Wadjet was the cobra goddess who protected pharaohs. In Mesopotamia, Ningishzida, lord of the good tree, guarded knowledge and the gates of the underworld. In Greece, Hermes carried the caduceus, symbol of healing and the integration of opposites. The serpent archetype is always tied to Mother Earth, to the power of renewal, and to the soul's immortality. Remember to save this video in a study playlist for later. In Genesis, the serpent is presented as the shrewdest of creatures and plays a decisive role. It offers Eve not merely a fruit, but a choice. It invites her to taste from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, despite God's prohibition. When Adam and Eve eat, their eyes are opened. They discover their nakedness. They recognize individuality, free will, self-awareness. In a single act, humanity is pulled from the stupor of ignorance and set on the path of self-knowledge. Crucially, the original text never directly identifies the serpent as Satan, the devil, or Lucifer. In the biblical account, the serpent is simply the bearer of an invitation to experience, to autonomy, to awakening. From a Gnostic perspective, the serpent is the true light bearer in the Eden story, the voice of awakening that stands against a jealous, controlling God who fears humanity's advance towards self-mastery and inner divinity. Lucifer, the light bearer, appears here as an archetype, the sacred rebel, the questioner, the one who pushes human beings to transcend animal ignorance and pursue their sleeping divine nature. In Gnostic tradition, the Eden passage is anything but a fall. It's humanity's first initiatory rite. The god of Eden, identified with a demiurge, is not the supreme god of light, but the warden of an artificial world. Eager to keep creatures in ignorance and submission, the serpent, by contrast, takes the role of Sophia, wisdom, the hidden logos, or even the Luciferian principle itself, challenging imposed order, sparking doubt, and offering the key to self-knowledge. When the serpent says, "You will be like gods, knowing good and evil," it isn't casting a curse, it's fulfilling a promise, the affirmation of the divine potential latent in every human being. The original crime was not sex, pleasure, or disobedience. It was the desire to know, to transcend automatism, to understand existence. The forbidden fruit is not poison, but the bitter medicine of awakening. By eating it, Adam and Eve become autonomous, able to err, to choose, to create, and to love. In esotericism, this is the essential rite of passage, crossing from innocence to consciousness, from spiritual childhood to maturity of being. Eden isn't the paradise of bliss, it's the garden of ignorance and passivity. True paradise is earned, never given. The serpent is the agent of the great work, the hidden initiation that makes humanity what it is meant to be. Creative, conscious, free. Eating the fruit is accepting the call to self-development, renouncing innocence in favor of wisdom, dying to ignorance and being born to awareness. The serpent symbol runs through every mystery tradition. In alchemy, it is nigredo, the beginning of the work, the prima materia to be transformed. The Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail, embodies eternal return, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. In Hermeticism, it is Kundalini, the sacred fire rising along the spine, awakening every center of consciousness. In Hermes' Caduceus, the twin serpents represent the union of opposites and the secret of true spiritual healing. The fear of knowledge has always been the greatest fear of control systems. The real sin wasn't eating the andat, fruit, it was accepting imposed ignorance. The true fall wasn't leaving Eden, it was giving up the right to think and seek truth. To reclaim the serpent is to reclaim the right to be free, free to know, to create, to change, and finally to be light on your own path. Do you agree with these insights? Disagree? And why? Share your thoughts in the comments so we can talk about it. Now that we understand Lucifer, in his original essence, has nothing to do with the devil, we're ready to travel even further, exploring how the same archetype of the light-bearer, the rebel, and the liberator appears in myths, religions, and cultures around the world. The Lucifer archetype is, above all, a symbol of intellectual and spiritual resistance, the supreme representative of freedom and courage. But what is an archetype exactly? Simply put, an archetype is a universal symbolic pattern, a kind of character or idea that shows up in myths, dreams, and stories across times and cultures because it's part of the human way of thinking. The psychologist Carl Jung said these archetypes live in our collective unconscious, present within all of us. They appear as figures like the hero, the sage, the rebel, or the light-bearer. The Lucifer archetype, as light-bearer and challenger of established orders, appears in many cultures with different names and faces, but brings the same message: challenge authorities, seek truth, and fight for the freedom to think and to be. That's why we see parallels like Lucifer, Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give to humanity; Melek Taus, the angel of wisdom for the Yazidis, and many others in different myths. At heart, they all embody a basic human impulse: the desire to grow, to know more, to break free, and to refuse ignorance or oppression. This archetype crosses religions, cultures, and centuries, and it continues to inspire those who seek to be free and true to themselves. Now it's time to explore the true origin of this luminous being, revered and respected by many ancient cultures. Let's look at Prometheus, the rebel titan who dared to defy the Olympian gods by stealing the sacred fire from Olympus and giving it to humanity. That fire wasn't just a physical flame. It was the spark of knowledge, civilization, and consciousness. Prometheus paid dearly for his liberating act. Zeus, the supreme and oppressive god, punished him cruelly, chaining him to a rock and sending an eagle to devour his liver each day, which then regenerated so the torment could continue forever. This story leaves us with a troubling question. Why are the figures who try to free humanity from ignorance so often the ones persecuted? But it isn't just Prometheus. In the very symbolic origin of the term Lucifer, we find the twins Eosphoros and Hesperus, two faces of the same planet, Venus in its morning and evening appearances. Eosphoros, the one who brings the dawn, signaled the arrival of knowledge, the illumination of the human mind. Hesperus, the one who shines at dusk, marked the wisdom earned throughout the day, soothing, welcoming, and restorative. Complementary aspects of a single star, they stand as deep symbols of the human journey toward learning and spiritual illumination. In the Homeric epics, composed around the 8th century BCE, the morning star what we now identify as the planet Venus, was already celebrated as one of antiquity's great emblems of beauty and hope. In both the Iliad and the Odyssey, attributed to the legendary Greek poet Homer, Venus appears as the fairest and most radiant of stars, inspiring poets, heroes, and sailors, and often linked to the goddess Aphrodite, patron of love and renewal. Fast forward a few centuries to 1st century BCE Rome, and we find Venus chucked Lucifer shining with renewed force in the pages of Latin masterpieces. In Virgil's epic Aeneid, 29-19 BCE, the bright morning star is exalted as a divine guide, capable of leading those lost in the darkness of uncertainty back into the safety of light and clarity. In Ovid's famous Metamorphoses, 28 CE, Lucifer is poetically described as the last star to leave the sky, saluting the dawn and preparing the stage for the day's rebirth. Tellingly, for the Romans, the term Lucifer, from Latin lux fere, light-bringer, carried no negative meaning. It was simply the poetic name of Venus as the morning star, celebrated in rites and festivals as a symbol of renewal, hope, and divine inspiration. In the astronomy of the time, Lucifer and Vesper were the two faces of the same planet, morning star and evening star, both signs of passage, cycle, and promise. It's essential to recognize that in these ancient narratives there is nothing diabolical or evil. Quite the opposite. Lucifer was a symbol of wisdom, knowledge, and beauty, admired and respected. The figure of Lucifer, under different names and appearances, echoes across cultures worldwide. What's striking is how consistently he appears tied to forbidden knowledge, individual freedom, and open defiance of authorities that would keep humanity in ignorance. In the Middle East, we encounter Melek Taus, the compelling peacock angel of the Yazidis. This luminous being is portrayed as one who refused, out of pride and wisdom, to worship a newly created human. Remarkably, after this act of defiance, he is forgiven by God and becomes ruler over all creatures. For the Yazidis, Melek Taus is no demon, but an entity worthy of admiration precisely for spiritual autonomy and moral courage. Similarly, in Islamic tradition, Iblis, also called Shaitan, refuses to bow before Adam when God commands it. Rather than obey without question, Iblis chooses to preserve his autonomy, even at the cost of celestial status. Beyond the later demonic framing, Iblis can be read, through an archetypal lens, as another emblem of refusing blind submission, courageously sustaining one's essence even under condemnation. This theme of the luminous rebel returns in many cultures and asks pointedly, what is more divine, obedience, or fidelity to the authentic self? In Mithraism, we find another echo of this archetype. In Persian origins, Mithra is a deity of light, wisdom, covenants, and vigilance over truth. Over time, especially in the Roman Empire, Mithras becomes a solar figure linked to rebirth, protection, and initiatory mystery, always celebrating the quest for illumination and self-mastery. Mithraic rites, reserved for initiates, taught the victory of light over the inner shadows, proposing a path of personal transformation and spiritual freedom. In this way, Mithra embodies the one who breaks through conformity and guides humanity toward higher knowledge, another reflection of the Luciferian archetype, the light bearer. In ancient Persia, Lucifer surfaces as Aji-Dahaka, the rebel dragon, later confused with evil, but originally a force of nature, vitality, struggle against complacency, and passivity. With Zoroastrianism came sharply dualistic legends that defined absolute good and absolute evil, ideas later absorbed by Judaism and especially Christianity. Before that, there was no devil in the later sense. There were opposing forces, yes, but integrated, dynamic, woven into life. In the Sumerian myth of the theft of the tablets of destiny, Enki appears as the distributor of sacred gifts, the one who breaks the monopoly of power and democratizes wisdom. Like Lucifer, Enki is the bearer of intellectual light, the spark of consciousness, the God who chooses to challenge oppressive order from above in the name of autonomy, creativity, and human liberation. In both, we find the same gesture, sacred insubordination, the gift of knowledge, and the impulse to raise humanity beyond imposed limits. This correspondence is not literal, but archetypal. Enki and Lucifer each represent the hidden instructor, the rebellious benefactor, the mediator between divine and human. Both are symbols of the spirit that dares, that questions, that offers humanity the keys to its own awakening, even under threat and censorship from established powers. At heart, they guard the same secret. The light of wisdom is always audacity, and true redemption exists only for those who challenge the taboo against knowledge. Tell me, have you ever felt you had to stay silent to avoid judgment? As if something is deeply off in the world around you and only a few can see it? I feel that every day. That's why I created this channel. To connect with others who think like I do. To share knowledge. Maybe others are searching for it too. Share this with someone. You are light and fire. Ignite other seekers. And here's something intriguing. On the far side of the world, in the East, we find yet another surprising kinship with the figure of Lucifer. In Hinduism, we meet Shukra, also known as the Daitya Guru, the teacher of the Daityas, those ancient beings who, dissatisfied with celestial apathy, rebelled in pursuit of sovereignty and spiritual freedom. Shukra is directly associated with the planet Venus, exactly like Lucifer, an explicit symbol of intellectual illumination, hidden wisdom, and opposition to divine complacency. The courage of these ancient beings to challenge a rigid, apathetic, and hypocritical heavenly order earned them the label Asuras, a term later redefined as demons in a deliberate shift by Brahmin authorities. Notice the repeating pattern. Any entity that dares to challenge the order imposed by the powerful is swiftly branded demonic to justify repression. In early Hindu tradition, Devas and Asuras were originally cosmic siblings of equal power. The Devas chose to passively accept celestial order, while the Asuras fought for freedom and intellectual independence. The victors, the Devas, then recast the losers, the Asuras, as depraved demons. It's a familiar, revealing narrative. Turning to Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian faith founded by Zarathustra, we find another instructive distortion. This dualist religion presents Ahura Mazda, the supreme god, and Angra Mainyu, Ahriman, leader of the opposing forces, symbol of chaos, rebellion, and challenge. Though Angra Mainyu is traditionally treated as malign within Zoroastrianism, his figure also embodies resistance to an absolute order imposed by the chief deity. Again, we encounter the Luciferian archetype, the one who resists a rigid order, who challenges an inflexible, oppressive authority. It's important to note that Zoroastrianism profoundly influenced Judaism and consequently Christianity. Elements like heaven and hell, final judgment, and a strict good versus evil duality were absorbed and adapted from these ancient traditions. Few realize that the archetype of the light-bearer, of knowledge and transformation, also flourished powerfully in the pre-Columbian Americas. Among the Maya, and later among the Aztecs, the prime figure of this myth was Kukulkan for the Maya, or Quetzalcoatl for the Aztecs, the Iusach feathered serpent. More than a mere god, Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, personified the living link between human and divine, the mediator who descended from the heavens bearing the secrets of the cosmos and the gifts of intelligence, art, and civilization. He is said to have taught writing, mathematics, astronomy, and above all, the hidden meaning of the natural cycles. Legend tells that, in a gesture of supreme generosity, he stole cacao, the food of the gods, from the deities and gave it to humankind. As Prometheus gave fire to the Greeks, cacao was not only flavor or energy, it was a symbol of communion, wisdom, and creative power. Even the name of the sacred drink, Xocoatl, evokes this sharing between heaven and earth, echoing the tradition of forbidden knowledge, of the fruit that awakens consciousness. Quetzalcoatl's story also touches the creation of the world. In a cosmic struggle, he dismembers the reptilian goddess Tlaltecuhtli, Tzipactli in some versions, a primordial being tied to earth and the original chaos, and from her body forms heaven and earth, separating light and darkness, order and disorder, much like the ancient dragon or creator serpent myths found across the world. Again, we see the serpent as the agent of awakening and new creation, not as a symbol of evil. Most fascinating of all is his direct association with the stars. For the ancient Maya and Aztecs, Quetzalcoatl was, above all, the embodiment of the morning star, Venus, the one who announces the dawn, goes before the sun, and carries the promise of renewal and a new cycle. In their lore, he is the keeper of cycles, ruler of time, guide of calendars and celestial mysteries, celebrated in temples and pyramids as the messenger of light, the force that challenges night and triumphs over darkness. It's the same Luciferian archetype we meet in so many other people's myths. It's no accident that Quetzalcoatl, Lucifer, Prometheus, and other light bearers share so many similarities. They are emblems of audacity, of the quest for knowledge, of the heroic act of bringing the divine spark into the world of mortals, often in defiance of higher powers, for the sake of human freedom and awakening. Venus was a visible miracle, a star of mystery and hope. First to announce the rising sun and last to resist at nightfall, Venus made the death and rebirth cycle its cosmic signature. That movement turned Venus into a universal emblem of renewal, transformation, and the promise that after every night, light returns. Unsurprisingly, many cultures identified Venus with the primordial mother goddess, the source of life, fertility, creativity, and the courage to begin again. In ancient Mesopotamia, more than 4 millennia ago, Venus was worshipped as Inanna and Ishtar, goddesses of love, desire, war, and fertility. Venus's cyclical vanishing and return was lived as the descent of Inanna into the underworld, and her resurrection, an allegory of the human drama, the descent into one's own darkness, and the rebirth that follows, stronger and more aware. Solvet coagula, as the alchemists said. In Greece and Rome, Venus became Aphrodite, lady of beauty, pleasure, and abundance. She was not merely a muse for poets and sailors, but a guide for farmers and lovers. Agricultural calendars were regulated by Venus's rhythms, which marked sacred times for planting, harvest, and celebrations of life and love. In Egypt, Venus's brilliance was associated with Isis, the great restorer, symbol of compassion, healing, and the reuniting of the world's and the soul's lost parts. In Chinese traditions, the dragon linked to Venus was a harbinger of luck, power, and wisdom, celebrating the magical bond of heaven and earth, spirit and matter. Venus was never just a planet in antiquity's sky. It was, for millennia, the luminous face of the sacred feminine, the celestial mirror of the great goddesses, and of every woman who dared to be free. It was Venus's glow, first to greet the dawn and last to linger at night, that guided rituals, calendars, and ancestral myths. Each cycle of that star, with its eternal dying and rebirth, was lived as the cycle of life, fertility, pleasure, the body itself, and the mystery of the feminine. The power of Venus was the power of woman in her deepest essence, to generate, to nourish, to transform, to enchant, to allure. No wonder the world's great goddesses, Inanna, Ishtar, Aphrodite, Isis, Lakshmi, Freya, Oshun, were all linked to the morning and evening star, making Venus a universal symbol of beauty, desire, renewal, and freedom. In every culture, Venus appeared as the archetype of the untamed feminine, mistress of birth and death, pleasure and wisdom, art, love, and wild nature. During matriarchal eras or their lingering traces, Venus was celebrated as guardian of mysteries, bearer of the spark that challenges darkness. The light of the morning star was seen as blessing, promise of abundance, protection, and inspiration. It was the feminine principle of creation in its purest state, able to cross the abyss of night to bring back the hope of day. Over time, that force was repressed, silenced, and reconfigured. The sacred feminine was pushed to the margins of myth, its temples destroyed, its priestesses persecuted. The glow of Venus, once a guide for women and a symbol of the body's and the soul's freedom, was recast as a sign of danger, temptation, heresy. But the story didn't end there. Venus remains in the sky every day, reminding us that nothing cyclical, pulsing, and eternal can be suppressed forever. Each time we look to the morning star, we connect with all the women who came before: mothers, daughters, artists, witches, lovers, sages. Venus keeps shining as a silent witness to the potency of the feminine, inviting the brave to reclaim within themselves the mystery and the freedom to be light in the dark. To reclaim Venus is to reclaim the right to dance, to create, to love, to be reborn, and above all, to refuse the dimming of one's own light. The feminine and Venus, two faces of the same ancient secret, always waiting for those who dare to remember. For all these reasons, Venus was never just a point of light. It was the living archetype of passage, the threshold between worlds, the soul's journey through mystery and self-knowledge. It was a beacon for those who refused to live in the dark, who sought transformation, inner freedom, and deep communion with nature's and the cosmos's secrets. When dogma tried to erase the star of Venus, it tried to suffocate everything she represents: the power to be reborn, the pleasure of existence, independence, the quest for mystery. To demonize Venus, as later tradition did, turning her into a forbidden sign, was an attempt to keep people from looking at the sky and recognizing their own light reflected there. To restore Venus's symbolism is to reclaim the right to awaken, to challenge the shadows, and to seize for ourselves the spark of illumination. Had you heard about this link between Lucifer, Venus, and the sacred feminine? What do you make of it? What does it awaken in you? Have you heard of the fallen angels or watchers from the ancient book of Enoch and wondered if they're the same as Lucifer? Many people make that confusion, but in truth they're very different stories, blended together many centuries later. In the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text outside the official biblical canon, we find the story of the Watchers, angels sent to observe humanity who descend to earth, fall in love with human women, and teach forbidden arts like metalworking, spells, and other occult practices. By doing this, they disobey divine law, father giant offspring, the Nephilim, and are punished, expelled from heaven. The chief leaders of these fallen angels are named Semjaza and Azazel. Lucifer, as you've seen throughout this piece, doesn't originally appear in that story at all. The name Lucifer arose in Latin translations of the Bible, referring to the morning star, Venus, in a poetic passage in Isaiah. Over time, Christian theologians and writers began to splice together various tales of falls and rebellions from Isaiah, Revelation, Job, and also Enoch, and forged a single narrative in which Lucifer becomes the chief of all fallen angels. That blending began between the 2nd and 5th centuries CE, when Christian thinkers such as Tertullian, c. 155–20 CE, Origen of Alexandria, c. 185–253 CE, and later Augustine, 354–430 CE, read diverse Old Testament and apocryphal passages allegorically, seeing in them a grand myth of the origin of evil. These authors connected the Watchers' rebellion in Enoch with the fall of Lucifer in Isaiah, already reinterpreted as a proud angel's downfall, and with Revelation's war in heaven, consolidating the image of a chief of the fallen angels. Remember, the Book of Enoch circulated widely in early Jewish and Christian worlds, and even influenced the New Testament, yet it was excluded from the Catholic canon, though it remained revered among Ethiopian Christians and studied in the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, especially in the 12th to 13th centuries, this symbolic fusion grew stronger. Writers and theologians like Thomas Aquinas, 1225–1274, referenced both Lucifer and fallen angels in their works, cementing the idea that Lucifer's celestial rebellion was the same as the Watchers. This thinking spread through sermons, books, and church art, shaping the Christian imagination to this day. Bottom line, in the ancient texts, Lucifer and the Watchers are separate. Only across centuries of interpretation, especially from the Middle Ages onward, did Christian tradition merge these stories and claim that Lucifer led a heavenly rebellion alongside other angels, effectively identified with Enoch's Watchers. That isn't in the original Bible. It's a symbolic construction built over time. Curiously, myths of celestial beings descending to earth and uniting with humans, creating extraordinary lineages, aren't unique to the Judeo-Christian tradition. In Greek myth, gods like Zeus, Apollo, and Poseidon mate with mortals and beget demigod heroes like Heracles and Perseus. In Sumerian lore, deities like Enki unite with human women, bringing forth liminal figures between divine and terrestrial. Even in African and indigenous traditions, we find stories of children of the heavens and children of the stars. In other words, the theme of a fall, of heaven mixing with earth, is a universal pattern of the collective unconscious, a recurring motif that speaks to humanity's longing for transcendence, knowledge, and transformation. Understanding this distinction is crucial. Not everything we hear as official story began that way. Often, it's interpretations, mixtures, and adaptations that gain power over time. The real richness lies in studying each source and noticing how symbols transform, always carrying at the core the same message of rebellion, the quest for knowledge and spiritual freedom. When we step into the mysterious world of magic, alchemy, and the occult, we find Lucifer present not as a malevolent being, but as a powerful, deeply respected symbol of hidden wisdom, radical freedom, and spiritual strength. In the old Italian witchcraft tradition known as Stregeria, Lucifer appears as Dianus Lucifero, a radiant, potent god, brother and consort of the goddess Diana. From their union came Aradia, the goddess who brought humans magical and/or spiritual knowledge, freeing them from religious oppression. Here, Lucifer is a triple god: the Horned One, deity of fertility and sexuality; the Hooded One, the Reaper god, master of natural cycles; and the Elder, supreme embodiment of esoteric wisdom. There is nothing demonic in this ancestral liberatory vision. In Enochian magic, transmitted to the famed English occultist John Dee in the 16th century, Lucifer appears veiled under the name Lucifitus, an entity directly associated with inner illumination and the awakening of spiritual power. For some Kabbalists, Lucifer is identified with Samael, consort of Lilith, personifying a primordial force of rebellion against oppressive, limiting dogma. In Hermeticism and Alchemy, we encounter Lucifer again, this time as Poimandres, the dragon of light and wisdom, guardian of universal mysteries. Symbolically, he's represented by the Ros Rubra, the red rose of alchemy, the seal of silence, secrecy, and the wisdom reached only through deep study and spiritual discipline. In modern occultism, especially among adepts of the left-hand path, Lucifer is often linked to the hidden Sephira Da'ath, knowledge, on the Kabbalistic tree of life. There, he's revered as a liberator of the human mind, the one who opens seekers' eyes to deep, discomforting truths. Did you know there are symbolic links between the Morning Star and Freemasonry? Here's a curiosity from my research. One of Masonry's most emblematic symbols is the blazing star, and Japais, radiant five-pointed star sending light in all directions. Far more than a simple image, it carries profound esoteric meaning. Traditionally, it's associated with Venus, the morning star. In Masonic tradition, the blazing star represents the presence of inner light, the relentless pursuit of truth and self-knowledge. It's the divine spark urging the initiate to overcome dogma and mental obscurity, walking the path of spiritual illumination. It's also an invitation to creative rebellion, a call to question, learn, and transform, never bowing to passivity born of fear. This symbolism parallels the legend of the Temple of Solomon. In mystical currents, especially Hermetic and Kabbalistic, tradition holds that the temple was raised with guidance from master builders who knew the secrets of the stars and sacred time. The temple's very orientation, always facing east, pays homage to the morning star, Venus, greeting the daily birth of light. More than a building, the Temple of Solomon symbolizes the human journey itself, our capacity to rebuild, elevate consciousness, and seek the truth hidden behind appearances. And here's a sky secret our ancestors already knew. Every 8 years, Venus sketches a pentagram in the heavens. We have a full video on the pentagram. Check it out later. The mystery doesn't end there. If we track Venus over an 8-year span, noting its position whenever it rises as the morning star, a surprising figure emerges. A perfect pentagram, the classic 5-pointed star, traced by the planet's motion relative to Earth. This celestial dance, known as Venus's synodic cycle, isn't mere astronomical whimsy. It's a sacred signature of cosmic order etched into the sky for those bold enough to read it. Witnessing that pattern, our ancestors naturally linked the pentagram to Venus's very essence, seeing in it the supreme emblem of the light-bearer, Lucifer, Venus. For them, there was no separation. The pentagram, the morning star, and Lucifer were faces of a single, celestial truth, an invitation to awakening and illumination. That pentagram, born from Venus's rhythm, became the great symbol adopted by occultists, alchemists, and esotericists across ages. The 5-pointed star represents the human microcosm, the union of the 4 elements, earth, water, air, fire, with the 5th, spirit, the harmony of the universe, and the limitless potential of the one who seeks the light. In the ancient mystery schools, the pentagram served as a seal of protection and a map of the soul's evolution, a secret of ascension, balancing instinct and consciousness, nature and divinity. Venus wasn't merely a heavenly body. It was a code, a key to initiation, visible proof that just as the stars move by patterns of beauty and order, so too can the human being chart a path toward wisdom and freedom. Lucifer is far more than a mythic figure or an esoteric symbol. He is a profound representation of the human capacity to question, to seek truth, to resist oppression, and to live with intellectual and spiritual autonomy. Each of us carries within the spark of inquiry, the courage to think freely, and the strength to confront imposed truths. This is spiritual freedom, the eternal quest for illumination. Lucifer, the light-bearer, stands for precisely what has always been feared: intellectual autonomy, spiritual freedom, and resistance to ignorance. Lucifer can be an archetype, the eternal spark dwelling in the soul of the world. He is the emblem of the free spirit that dares to seek light amid shadows, the silent questioner who inspires humanity to challenge its own limits. As an archetype, Lucifer is the divine breath that awakens the courage to break the chains of ignorance and walk the path of self-knowledge, guiding each being on the inner journey. Lucifer can be Venus, the shimmering star that pierces the veil of night and reveals itself as the herald of dawn. He is the luminary that joins heaven and earth, the threshold between dark and light, ending and beginning. Each morning Venus is reborn, bringing with it the promise of awakening, hope, and eternal return. It is Venus's radiance that whispers to the soul, after darkness, there is always light. Lucifer can be a god, a goddess, or both, for his essence is as fluid as life itself. In some myths, he appears as a wise, rebellious god. In others, as the goddess of love, fertility, and renewal. In many places, he is both at once, the perfect union of polarities, reminding us that divinity inhabits everything that is born, dies, and is reborn. Lucifer is the creative principle that refuses fixed forms, dancing between opposites, overflowing with beauty, desire, and wisdom. Lucifer can be Venus descending from the heavens so the light of spirit, the spiritual sun, can rise. He is the star of hope and rebirth. Lucifer, or Venus, is you, is me. He is every human who dared to question, who broke the chains of ignorance, who went beyond the surface, beyond mere materiality. Lucifer can be the individual, you, me, every human being who awakens with the light of the morning star. We are Lucifer each time we dare to begin again, each time we are reborn from our own nights and welcome the sun inside the chest. We are the evening star when we accept a cycle's end, rest, and release, and the morning star when we announce what is new, possible, luminous. To be Lucifer is to live that eternal movement of dying and being reborn, embracing shadow and turning it into fuel for light. It is to remember, in silence, that every dawn carries the sacred invitation to be always bearers of our own divine spark. If this knowledge has sparked something within you, a question, a flicker of wonder, a longing to go further, recognize it as your call. Moments like this aren't accidents. They're invitations to step onto a path few dare to walk. Don't stop here. Visit our profile and dive into the other videos we've prepared. Each one was crafted over years of study, research, and dedication, not just to inform you, but to awaken your highest self and give you tools for transformation. Your time and your presence here are deeply valued, because every seeker who joins this circle strengthens the movement we're building together. Subscribe to the channel, because here, truth isn't hidden or watered down. It's revealed in depth, stripped of illusions, and shared with clarity so it can reach those who are ready. Tap like, so this message can cut through the noise of ignorance and reach more souls who need it. Leave a comment below and share your experience. What revelation struck you most today? I read every response, and your voice doesn't just add to the conversation. It helps steer the direction of this community. And don't keep this wisdom to yourself. Share it with someone brave enough to awaken, because knowledge only becomes light when it's passed on. Together, we carry the torch of truth forward, illuminating the path for those still searching in the dark.